Dan Abnett, I'm coming for you. Good evening. It's finally time. We're finally here. Oh my god, I get to talk about motherfucking Horus Heresy. Yeah! This is all I've been reading for the past year and a year and a half, whatever time is, I don't know anymore. But you know what? I managed to get 2 blessed days where my burnout ceased 2 weeks ago, and I wrote the fucking script for this video, and then the burnout hit again, and now it is the day before my very last final, which will be at a crisp 10:30 a.m., which sounds early, but no, it's not, because I used to think it was at 8 a.m., but it's not anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and record this. I was going to record it if it were at 8 anyways, but, you know, I just want you to know where I am as I'm starting this video. So let's just hop right into it. Today we're talking about Horus Rising by Dan Abnett. And as always, spoiler warning ahead, this is 100% purely my opinion, and based on my own reading preferences and all that fun stuff. At this point, I'm semi-versed in Warhammer lore, but definitely not enough to not get things wrong, so yeah, sorry if I do in advance. But you know, as I've said before, if I get something wrong, point me towards the book it's in, unless it's something so vague or vast that you just need to tell me what it is without saying exactly what book it happens in. And whether or not I love something, I will be critical of it, so I feel like I really need to emphasize this today, because I do have one specific criticism for this book that makes me feel really bad when I say it out loud, but it's really not as bad as it sounds, so we'll get to that when we get to it. This is my third ever Warhammer book. I read this back in March of 2024, and I'm gonna be real with you. I love Primarchs. I love the drama. It's the whole reason I started watching the Horus Heresy, so I'm kind of insane about this series already. I own the physical copy of this, but it's on loan right now, and I have not had the time to go get it from my friend because he lives 2 hours away. So all I have to hold for this review is my sadness, and I guess, I don't know, this thing. I'll hold him, so I don't feel empty. If you've never read the Horus Heresy before, we're gonna go over whether or not you should read it at the end of this video. And honestly, it's a lot. It is a lot. As someone who's gone through the first 8 already, working on number 9, it can be very boring at times if you have the wrong book. And we will get to the books that are not so great, but this is not one of them. That's the wonderful part. This is definitely not one of the boring books. What got me excited to read these novels is the fact that we get to see what set up the whole 40k universe in the first place. That's what really interested me the most when I started reading it. And let me tell you, does this novel know who its audience is? Because right off the bat, that opening line, "I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor." Absolute cinema. I remember the first time I opened this novel, and I opened to that first line, and then I closed it and went, oh, that's the story I'm in for. It's a really good way to start off this whole series, honestly. This is one of those ones that definitely knows that you're coming in knowing what's happening, so it's not even gonna bother trying to, not build up suspense, but it's not gonna bother trying to make a mystery out of it. Really, it's gonna give you exactly what you expect, but it's gonna try and do it in the most fun manner that is possible for a novel that's like 400 pages long. Overall, this is just a really compelling hook, and it works really well for me. And since we're on the subject, really, like, having prior knowledge before going into this novel does a lot for, like, my personal enjoyment of it. Obviously, I didn't know everything, and I think I was at the perfect middle ground where I knew what Space Marines were, and I knew how they worked, and I knew what chaos kind of was, and I knew how it worked, but not enough to have all of the answers, and so I was, like, more compelled, I feel, as I was going through the novel, because I had just enough knowledge to understand what was going on, but not enough for me to go, oh yeah, this is the part where this happens, and this is the part where this happens. I think this is like the perfect middle ground for reading this series, in general, honestly. And that is because we are dealing with one of my favorite Warhammer characters, GARVIEL Loken. he does not know everything that's going on. So it's great because I don't know what's going on. So we're sitting here together like, damn, this chaos stuff is whack, isn't it? Another thing, I don't know if I've made this clear enough yet, but I have, like, come to the realization that what I love to read, like, what makes a novel enjoyable for me is not the action, not the setting, but the characters themselves. And good lord on high, do I love the characters in this fucking novel. Everyone from GARVIEL Loken to Horus to fucking Malgohurst, like, all of them, they're just so good. Dan Abnett does an amazing job, like, with characterization in general, and I'm gonna talk more about it in a little bit, but, like, I feel like, about how this started because of the way that these characters were set up. Like, we only have so much time with Horus being a good guy, I guess you could say, this one novel, but I legitimately, by the end of it, was sad about his fall. And it really set up how invested I was for the next 2 books, and it really comes down to how they were written in this novel. Speaking of characters, please now allow me a very, very quick moment to be incredibly normal about Sanguinius. I was not expecting he would be in this novel. Listen, all I remember is that I was at work, and there was nothing really happening, and I was just trying to, like, kill time between the things I was doing. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to read the novel. And I'm sitting there reading, minding my own business, and then, oh my god, Pookie! Oh no! Why was it him? I know where this is going! Why was it him? I had to be composed, professional, but the way my eyebrows skyrocketed off my forehead the moment Sanguinius showed up needs to be studied by fucking scientists. And while Sanguinius was, like, an immediate rocket into my heart, Loken overall was, like, a slow chipping away at the exterior of my being. Like, hi, I'm now going to be a character you're going to be depressed about for, like, the next year. And, great, thanks Dan Abnett, thank you for that. I have so much more that I'm going to say in the writing section, because I think a lot of what I love about this book is more in the writing portion, for me personally, than the reading portion. So I'll get to it all in a second. I will say this, I do have one tiny little criticism for me as a reader, and that would be definitely the ending 2 parts. I think, like, Spiderland's section went on just a little bit too long, and the Interix was just a little bit too short. Like, if I could get 20 pages off of Spiderland and 20 pages added to Interix, I think I would have been perfectly happy, but as it is right now, I was getting pretty antsy about halfway through the whole murder situation, which I should specify is the name of the planet. I'm not saying that someone got murdered. Not yet. But it just felt like it was going on too long. And I think that's partially because while I love and adore Saul Tarvitz, I could not stand another second of goddamn Lucius speaking. I'm sorry if you're a Lucius fan. I cannot stand him for the life of me. And it only gets worse with each novel that I read. I am so sorry. He is not giving me a reason to like him. Like, I could tolerate him in this novel, but then by the time I got to Fulgrim, I was like, this motherfucker needs to shut the fuck up. And in that sort of same thing, I would have loved to see more of the Interix, especially because of how Horus is affected by it by the end. I also just think it's a really interesting and compelling idea. I would have loved to see Horus actually start to understand that the Emperor lied to him in this section. Like it doesn't need to be like, oh my god, my dad lied. It just needs to be the beginnings of, oh wow, something ain't right here. At the end of the day, though, this is a small critique. I understand that Spiderland murder section needs to be as long as it is, because we're establishing Saul Tarvitz as a character. And you know what? All things considered, I'm fine with a couple more pages of Saul. It just got a bit antsy near the end. At least until Sanguinius showed up. Then suddenly I didn't care about the length anymore. Yeah, this is going to be a theme. I am a diehard Sanguinius fan. I know what's coming to him. No, I'm not okay. The writing. Yeah, I can see why people like Dan Abnett. I can definitely see why people like Dan Abnett. Everyone everyone has strong characterization in this. Even if I don't remember the character's name, I remember who they are as a character. I don't know if that makes complete sense, but I hope it does. Like, I could not remember every single Remembrancer's name if you asked me, but I do remember who they are, and I have their image of, like, what I was picturing them as in my brain still. Like, I can still see them and what they do. That's how strong characters they are. I think this is incredibly important for this kind of novel because we have one novel to establish these people who are about to, like, pretty much half of them fall to chaos, and we have to care that they fall. Even more than this, I really, really like how Space Marines are characterized in this novel. I have a small confession to make. I know that they get a lot of writing, but I do actually enjoy Space Marine stories. I'm really sorry. I know this is apparently a hot take. But, like, I enjoy the big men. Please don't at me. I like my little guys, my little normal dudes too. I see big Space Marine and something activates in my brain. What can I say? But all that being said, I think their characterization in this specifically is just incredibly interesting to me because from what I've been told, they're, like, really defined in the Horus Heresy novels. I don't know if people mean that, like, there are more deviations in each person's personality, or if they mean that, like, they actually have character, but either way, I think there's, like, a lot of really cool little things that Space Marines do, and it all starts here in Horus Rising, and it really just continues to build through the Horus Heresy from what I've come to understand. There's this one scene, and I'm pretty sure it was in this novel, like, I'm 99% sure, where Tarek and Loken are walking back from a lodge meeting, and you just get this little, like, moment where they're walking and jumping to smack pipes. And this is not something at all that I would think a Space Marine would do because of the way that, at least, I've seen them characterized in some places, and of course, like, the general fanon conception of them. And I just think it's really cool and adds an extra layer to them. They're not just, like with the Custodians, how I said back in Watchers of the Throne, they're not just automatons. They are still, like, people, but off to the left a little bit. It's really interesting to me. And in that sense, it also makes me more invested in their characters, which is very, very important when most of the Horus Heresy is in Space Marine POV. And when I say most of the POVs, the rest of that usually goes to Remembrancers. And we all know how I feel about Remembrancers being the, like, authors of the, like, novels, theoretically. So just, like, seeing them talking and, like, interacting with the world, and it's kind of clear that they're a little bit the retellers of the story. Oh, I want to squish this little beanie boy. It makes me so happy. It's just really cool to see what Remembrancers were in 30k and, like, what freedom they had compared to 40k now. Which, if you don't know this, I'm pretty sure this actually happens in False Gods. But there's this one Remembrancer that Loken ends up sponsoring because he sits there and straight up, like, kind of calls the Imperium out for being trash, which in 40k would have gotten him shot, but in 30k, he just gets in a bit of trouble, and, like, Loken's like, well, they might shoot you, but because I'm going to sponsor you, they're probably going to leave you alone. You're not going to get away with that when the Inquisition is around. So it's just really cool to see the, like, differences in world building between a 30k and a 40k novel. And I think what really adds a layer to this is the fact that I read Outgunned before I read this, so that I can actually see that direct comparison. I must speak my truth now, because I feel like this needs to be said because it's just so fucking compelling to me. If you watched my Watchers of the Throne video, you know that, I love a good story that is about a, like, person who doesn't usually feel things, learning to feel things. And, let me tell you something that I learned about Mercedes and Loken. I am 100% a Mercedes x Loken shipper. Don't even come for me, I will die on this hill. Why? Well, something that changed my brain chemistry while I was looking around, doing some research, was that in a novel, it is straight up acknowledged in one of the Horus Heresy novels that Loken falls in love with Mercedes. At least in the most of a way that a space marine can. Once again, seeing these things that I am told don't actually really happen is really compelling to me. And I don't just mean like, oh, people on Reddit saying, oh yeah, space marines don't feel love. I'm talking like in universe, them being like, nah, love, that ain't happening. That's just not something that happens. And then seeing a space marine like slowly realize, ah, shit, I'm kind of into that lady over there. And I want to make something clear. This is not a piece of bad writing, at least not to me. This is not him, like, trying to fuck with canon. This is him taking canon in a very interesting direction. I think you can do things to canon out that aren't normally, like, things that happen, so long as you do it in a compelling manner, and you, kind of give a reason for it. Because from what I understand, Space Marines are brainwashed into not really loving people, and I don't think GARVIEL loves Mercedes in the way that we associate love being like sexual. I think it's more emotional. It's just really compelling, and when this actually comes up in the novels that it's in, I will be a like feral individual. I swear this will make probably way more sense when it finally happens. I'm just saying this is a really compelling thing, and also there was a whole scene where Mercedes straight up looked at his man-tits, and honestly, I understand. It's that one fucking scene from Captain America. Direct eye line towards the chest. Holy shit. Okay, moving on from that. Another thing I really love about the writing in this book is that we don't really get Horus's POV. We get Horus from a biased POV, which I think is great for not only building tension and, like, character for Horus himself, because we have to see, like, this is how people perceive him, and we just see the cracks of what's going to happen. But also, like, it keeps the... how do I just explain this? We know where this is going. We know what his thoughts are gonna be. But the way that it's written out, we don't actually know how that thought process works out. We can only infer, I guess you would say. There's this whole scene where he's trying to explain to Loken that warp beasts are real, and that they're just not talked about. And at the end, he has this whole, like, yeah, man, I wish my dad would tell me what's going on. And though he, like, mildly states it, we just, it's a bit more subtle than what I'm saying. I don't have my book to pull it up right now, unfortunately. But, it's one of those things of, like, I don't know exactly what your thoughts are, but I can absolutely see how motherfucking Erebus convinced everyone and you to do the thing you did. Also, keeping in mind that this is a trilogy, the pacing in this, the overall pacing in this story is pretty good. And I do think it needed a trilogy to actually properly capture everything that was going to go on. Because if I had to read the content that's in these 3 books in just this book, I don't think I would have liked it. I think, 1, it would have been too long, and 2, it would have been too rushed. I would not have given a single shit about any of these characters had it been a trilogy. That's a little bit of an overstatement, I recognize. I'm just saying that I don't think we would have gotten the time and dedication to each one that we have in this novel if it were just one book. Finally, I have been saying this throughout, but the actual setting of this novel, like, setting up 30k, because damn, that is a daunting task if you think about it. We have to set up what the fucking Imperium was like before the trash fire it is now. I think it does a really good job at this. We get a hint of what the height of the Crusade was. We get to feel, it like creates this, like, this is what we lost feeling that is definitely kind of setting the stage for what the Imperium would become now. And honestly, this is kind of a running theme throughout all of the Horus Heresy novels. We get to see the height of technology, the height of the Space Marine legions, the height of the Imperium itself, I would argue. Which, you know, it makes it overall more depressing to see how far it falls because of the Heresy. But, it also does a really good job at setting up the true fascist nature that the Imperium is supposed to represent. And, like, even though it's not as, I guess, upfront, you would say, as 40k is, like, the underlying, I wouldn't even say underlying currents, they straight up, we start out, like, killing a whole planet because they're into religion. So just flip that, for 40k, where it's now the Emperor is our religion, so we're gonna shoot you. You can definitely see why Imperium in 40k is the way it is. Pretty much, the Emperor went away, and they had what was already at like a 10, and they just cranked it up to a 100. The only reason I say it is not as bad in 30k compared to 40k is, like, the Mechanicus not as dogmatic here as they are later. And also the legions are much, much bigger, from what I can tell at least. And it seems to be there's just like a lot more Marines in general, it feels like, at least, because you know the whole saying of like, oh, well, if a Marine shows up, that means something really bad is happening? Not in 30k. The Marines will just fucking go wherever the hell they want to go, from what I've seen. Marines will just kind of show up, and they'll be like, yeah, we're here to bring the planet into compliance. They don't care if you're alien, and they don't care if you're human. They're showing up, they're gonna bring you into compliance, and then they're gonna continue on their merry little fucking way. I will say, it's really hard to tell how many, like, compliances they've done, because, like, they have the whole numbering system. I don't understand it at all, nor does it feel like it accurately displays what they've done in the Crusade, from what I can tell. I could be entirely wrong. It just doesn't feel accurate, but, I mean, from what I understand, Warhammer's never had a great thing with numbers anyways, so I don't think it matters. But yeah, the effort is in the details. I really like the details here. Now that we've said all that, it's time to talk about what sort of, like, criticisms and critiques I have about this. And I will say, this is a very small one. The saddest part about starting in the middle is not seeing how it began. The hardest part of starting Horus Heresy right here at the end of the Crusade is that with this novel, the only solid Primarch characterization we get is for Horus. We get a little bit of Sanguinius, we get plenty of Luna Wolves, like Legion characterization, we get, I think, an okay amount of Emperor's Children characterization, and then the Emperor, I'm okay with being, like, he's supposed to be mysterious, so I'm okay with him being passively characterized. But that means that pretty much almost all of the Warhammer Horus Heresy novels that I have read so far have been backfilling the information that comes before this one. There are, of course, exceptions to this. Battle for the Abyss is within the time frame of the Heresy. Fulgrim and Legion are they kind of get away with it because they either start just before this novel and then catch up to the trilogy, or they at least end within the trilogy's time frame. Descent of Angels, I don't even know if it ends within the time frame of these first three novels. It has nothing to do with the Heresy at all, and the reason being is that it has to set up Lion as a full-ass character. And the same is to be said with Fulgrim and Legion. They have to set up the other Primarchs. So, like, you know, if you're going to read Horus Heresy, one of the big problems you're going to run into is, I think you've probably seen the meme of, like, the massive fucking reading chart. And it's necessary. It has to be like that, because you're going to get a bunch of storylines that have nothing to do with what they just set up within the first couple of books, because they have all of these other fucking characters that you have to set up, and you have to set up the Primarchs. You absolutely have to, because we're building up to the Siege of Terra. And if you have even one Primarch, of which there are at least two, in my opinion, that probably don't get the characterization they need, you're gonna have, like, kind of a lackluster showing at Siege of Terra. At least that's my prediction as of right now. That's if they make it to Siege of Terra. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about how they did Ferrus Manus very dirty with the Horus Heresy, and I don't mean very dirty in the fun way, I just mean in the disappointing way. This is not a bad thing per se, and I can't even, like, fault Dan Abnett for this. I don't think this is his fault. This is definitely a GW issue. But at the same time, I don't know if you could really start the Horus Heresy with anything but these first three books. So it's just kind of like a product of, I guess, the situation it's in. However, I will say, I have to bring it up, because once again, when you get to later novels and you're sitting here like, damn, this has nothing to do with what I just read, it can be a bit demotivating. So I will say that. See, now this brings us to the critique that I'm actually not looking forward to, because whenever I say it out loud, it sounds really bad. And it's not meant to be bad. So, I feel like, I don't know. I guess I feel bad when I'm talking about it. If I were in a classroom for a creative writing class, this would not sound as bad as it is during like a workshop or something. But I'm not. I'm currently making a video on YouTube with people who maybe aren't active writers. So they might hear this and they might go, damn, that's a bit rough. And it's not. It's really not. This is actually very, like, this is a thing that happens to plenty of English majors because we have so many books that we read. It all goes in one ear and comes out the other. So, with that being said, there's one big question you always have to ask yourself when you read a novel, and that is, what do I remember a year later? It's been a little over a year now, and before I make these scripts, I always do like a minor skim of my book and a minor skim of the lexiconum's like summary, just to make sure I don't forget anything, and see what I remember, because maybe there's some point in there that I actually thought was really cool, and it just like left my brain. Or it's something that I thought was so inconsequential that it also left my brain. For example, in Outgunned, completely forgot about the whole elf storyline because my brain was like, that's just not important information. It's not interesting. The problem is, when I went to write this script, and it might have been the burnout, but I don't think it entirely was, I had so much trouble starting it, especially the reading section, because while I absolutely remember enjoying reading this book and having a great time doing it, I don't actually remember why I enjoyed reading it. And generally speaking, I can be very good at remembering what I read. Like, I have an entire shelf full of Warrior Cat books that I'm staring at right now, and I could tell you what happens in each and every single one of those, and I can tell you what happens in this. I just cannot remember why I enjoyed reading it so much. There's nothing wrong with this. I want to make that very clear. There is nothing wrong with this, but it can be very hard to pinpoint why I think someone should read this, especially if they don't approach reading a book the same way I do. If I can't tell them why I enjoyed reading it, I could tell them from like a writing perspective, but maybe not all of the things that I liked about the writing are a good reason to read the book. And I think a big reason why this problem happens for me in the first place is that there is so much content in this book that it just doesn't have enough narrative anchors for me to remember what happened and why I liked it. On my very initial, attempt to remember what happened in this novel, I remembered 4, narrative anchors, which are moments in the story that stood out to me that helped me remember what's in it and, what's around it. The first one was the opening line. The second one was the demon attack in the mountains, the Whisperheads. The third one was Sanguinius showing up. And the fourth one was the very last scene of Horus being very depressed during the Interrex battle. Now, with Sanguinius and the Interrex, I actually remember most of what happened in those parts because I remember how it begun up to Sanguinius and after. The whole reason that he ended up there, I remember that whole section. I also remember pretty much everything that happened at the Interrex. However, between the opening line and the Whisperheads fight, I actually did not remember a lot of what happened in between there. Which ironically also means that I forgot Samus, which I think might be the funniest outcome of this whole situation, considering the whole point is to remember Samus. You could not get me to remember him, even though I know he shows up multiple times. I will continue to forget him out of spite. But anyways, there are so many things that I forgot in between the Whisperheads and the opening of the book that I think actually it's kind of sad that I forgot them. I remembered the actual demon coming to attack the Remembrancers, but I forgot that Horus had a whole conversation with Loken, and I forgot that Loken had to, kill a bunch of his squad because they got possessed by said demon. I forgot about not only the lodge meetings, but I also forgot about the whole, Mornorvial, induction ceremony that Loken goes through, and, a whole scene where the Remembrancers are talking to the public about, I think, how they're going to install the Imperial Truth or something like that. And there's a bunch of smaller Remembrancers scenes that I have mildly forgotten about, but they're there in the back of my mind. And that's not to say that these things were terribly written, so I just forgot about them, or anything like that. I think that these scenes were absolutely necessary to build character, because when I go back and think about them, I go, oh yeah, no, that was necessary for Loken's character, that was necessary for Euphrates' character, and so on and so forth. I think that it was just, this was a lot of setup for big things that are going to happen later. And especially because of the way that I read the next two books and what happens in the next two books, while Horus Rising is really, really well written, compared to the rest of the trilogy in terms of what happens, I don't think it's as interesting, which is, I understand, kind of a flip of how people normally see the trilogy. People say Horus Rising is the best written, and I think Galaxy and Flames is, like, still well written, but, like, the least well written. And I do actually agree with that opinion in terms of writing. But in terms of, like, attention grabbing moments, I think the further you get along in the trilogy, False Gods and Galaxy and Flames has way more, like, anchoring moments in the story compared to Horus Rising. So that's probably why, looking back on it, my brain goes, I remember really, really enjoying this novel, and I remember loving reading it, and I don't know why. And once again, this happens a lot, especially with someone who's an English major who reads a lot of novels. I have plenty of novels for school that I don't fucking remember what happened to them, but I do remember enjoying reading them. But, like, with such a mainstay novel like this, I would hope that I remember more than what I did. Especially some of the scenes that I forgot. It legitimately makes me sad that I forgot those scenes. And so I feel like I had to bring it up, because I would not be surprised if this happened to anyone else, where they think back on it and they go, actually, why did I like Horus Rising that much? And, you know, maybe this is a moment to go back and reread it. I think this would be a completely fine book to reread. It's just, I don't remember. The only reason I bring it up is because compared to, like, Watchers of the Throne and Outgunned, I remembered way more about what happened in those novels than I did here. They were shorter. Maybe that had something to do with it. But, you know, I guess we'll see what I remember as we move on through these novels. So finally, academically, is there anything academic to talk about with Horus Rising? And I say yes. A lot of what I've had to talk about academically so far, I think, has been, like, more creative writing stuff. And there are actual, like, more analysis driven things that I have to say about later novels. Fulgrim is definitely going to be more analysis than creative writing for this academic section. But here, specifically, we're going to talk about the power of a very strong opening. This is very topical for me because we talked about this a lot this quarter in one of my classes. So, basically, your opening section of anything you write is going to be the overall hook for your story. And like I said earlier, this story and Dan and Abnett know that we already know what's coming. So why not just hit us off right away with a really strong hook of I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. Dan Abnett absolutely weaponizes our knowledge of where the fuck this story is going against us with this opening line. And also does a very fun thing of tying the beginning of the Horus Heresy to the end of the Horus Heresy, because obviously oh, well, this is a big spoiler if you haven't read The End in Death Part 3, so maybe I won't say it until we get there. But for reasons I will not say, it works really well in the context of how the story ends. The opening is also just really strong in general. It's a very ambiguous battle between someone who claims to be the Emperor of Mankind, so it's all one big foreshadowing event, and I won't lie, because I was young and naive in the Warhammer sphere, I was not entirely certain what the fuck was going on. I was like, am I, like, reading something in the future right now? What the fuck? And then I realized, no, we're in the past. We're supposed to be in the timeline. But it's just fun. It just works in a, like, really cool little way, I think. And I think it's a great example of what a strong beginning to a story can look like and how it functions. Overall, I think beyond this opening, there is a lot of attention and love that goes into the first three of this trilogy, and I can see why so many people say that you should read it. So that brings us to do I recommend this novel? For first-time readers, as much as I love it, I'm going to say no, and I can also see why other people say not to. Conceptually, yes, you can absolutely read the first, like, for 3 Horus Heresy novels, but the thing is, they are kind of dense, and they are a lot longer than your average Warhammer novel, so I think it's better to build up to them. And also, this is 30k, which is not 40k. Those are 2 different things. So if you want to be reading what is currently happening in the setting, do not read the Horus Heresy. At least not right away. I do think that you should go back and eventually, like, read these first 3 novels. They are quite good, in my opinion, and I do think they are worth your time, but I don't think they're worth your time if you're a first-time reader, because you will probably be spending a lot of it kind of like going, oh, what's happening? Who are these people? Why should I care? So if you have, like, no knowledge at all, and you're a first-time reader, just don't read these novels, not yet at least. If you are familiar with the lore, but you're a first-time reader, then it's a tentative yes. I'm gonna be very, very clear when I say this. I started reading the Horus Heresy because I wanted to. I bring this up because I mean, I wasn't a first-time reader, but I was within the familiar with Warhammer lore category when I was reading it. And, like, it's a commitment at the end of the day. It is, especially if you're someone who wants to see where it goes. This is a 60 novel long series. I think that's including Siege of Terra. It might not be, though. So it's a lot. It is a lot. And you're gonna have to be ready to pick and choose. Find a good review site. I know I did. I actually did find a review site to kind of pick and choose what I wanted to read. And it does not decide whether or not I like a novel, but it does kind of align with what I've heard about the novels before. Like, for example, I think it says on there that Galaxy in Flames isn't that good, or that you shouldn't read Fulgrim, but now you should. I don't agree with those 2 sentences. However, it does say, for Battle for the Abyss, just don't. That's its description for just, like, reading it, just don't. And honestly, I've never seen a review hit the nail on the head harder. As for everyone else, I think absolutely you should give it a try. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is going to love these novels. I don't think so. Once again, I love character, but if you're not a character person and you prefer action, then you might actually find this novel to be a bit boring. I'm not gonna lie to you. But if you are here for characterization, you should absolutely read this book, and you really give it a try. It's $10 for the physical copy, which is a lot cheaper than, you know, your other Warhammer things, and even other Warhammer books. So, you know, it doesn't hurt to try it out. It doesn't hurt. If you go in and you just sit there and you're like, you just hype yourself up and you go, yeah, I'm reading the Horus Heresy. I'm going to see how it all goes down. I think if you're just ready to have fun with it, you're going to have fun with it. I hope. But yeah, that's it. That's Horus Rising. I really, really enjoyed this novel. And now I guess I'll talk about, if you've watched my last video, I was struggling to figure out what I wanted to read after I finished Mechanicum, and I figured it out. So I'll tell you who won. First up, I'm going to be reading Above and Beyond. I read Outgunned. It just makes sense. I should just read the sequel. So I'm going to be going on vacation in 2 days, and I'm going to try and blast through Mechanicum, and hopefully I can get started on Above and Beyond while I'm out there. Next up, Infinite and Divine. Everyone and their mom has told me to read Infinite and Divine, and I'm actually very, very excited to go through it. What? Wait, what? Oh, okay, it's split into 3 acts. I opened up the middle of the book and it said chapter 1, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Finally, I'll be reading Vulpin Glory. Last time I said that this was a Rogue Trader book. I lied. That is incorrect. This is actually a Guardsman book, and I'm reading it because my brother, like, on his hands and knees, hands gripping his hair, going, please, please read a Guardsman book. I just want you to read a Guardsman book. So I'm going to read a Guardsman book finally for him. After those 3, I'm going to go back to reading Horus Heresy for a little while. until I feel like, okay, I'm ready to chug through another 3 books that I own that aren't related to 30k. But yeah, honestly, I'm very excited to start those books. Thank you so much for your recommendations. Right now I'm having a great time with Mechanicum. Not only is it's nice because I said I want to take a break from Space Marine POV, and Mechanicum, from at least from what I've read so far, is not only nothing to do with Space Marines and instead to do with Mechanicus, but we also get a Knight POV, which has been super fun so far, so I'm very excited to talk about that. I will see you next time. Have a good night. Get fucked!